Quiz time. Let's revise the text. What genre is the novel? It's a political text. Yes, you can characterize it that way. Let's start with this. It's dystopian fiction. So what does it mean that it's fiction? What does fiction mean? It's not real. It's made up. It's imaginative, right? Dystopian. What does dystopian mean? It's imperfect, but it's kind of a nightmarish reality. It's basically what I would call, this is a really important word, it's like a hyperbolically imperfect world. What about that? Because hyperbole means what? Exaggerated. It's an undesirable world. Okay, so we have the novel set in a dystopian setting. We also have it being fiction. What else? What other aspects of genre in there? We had political as well, and that comes from Orwell's agenda. George Orwell, the writer, was a political writer, and he definitely wanted to actually have a political impact in that he wanted people to protest and rebel and resist the governments of the day when he actually wrote. It doesn't follow the romance genre, because if it was in the romance genre, a particular sequence of events would have to basically arise, and that doesn't happen. Right, yeah. So even though there is a romance in there, it's kind of a romantic tragedy. You could say there's a romantic tragedy within it. I wouldn't call the whole novel that though. Just be careful, because the whole novel doesn't follow that. It's a sub-genre within it. Yes, so just be careful about using that. I wouldn't use that in the introduction, but you could refer to that kind of tragic romance between them where they actually betray each other. Because Winston and Julia, does everyone remember in the text? They betray each other. Whereas in the romance genre, the two people who are meant to be together end up together. What about like the ministry of truth, the ministry of love? Do those things really represent those virtues? Does everyone remember that there are these 4 big ministries in the society of Oceania? So Winston lives in this society, and there's these 4 big ministries which tower above all the other buildings in the city. The ministry of truth, love, plenty, the ministry of plenty, and then there is the ministry of peace. So what aspect of genre is that touching on? It's irony, very good. They're ironic, but what is irony a part of more broadly? You have to talk about this in your essay, so this is a key thing to write down. It is a satirical novel. It has to be, because everything is pulled to its most absurd extreme. So when things are drawn out to their logical but absurd conclusions, that's a satire, isn't it? Because by showing extremes, you can reveal truth more easily. And the reason that it's a satire is because Orwell takes totalitarianism, this is what you need to say, he takes totalitarianism to its most extreme and absurd consequences. This ties into another aspect of the genre of the novel, because it's taking it to its most logical conclusion. We're not yet at the conclusion. 1984, it was written in, what date? 49. So therefore it's a what kind of novel? So it's futuristic, and another good word that I would like to use is speculative. So do you see all the terms we just wrote down? Don't group them all together. You can use them in different ways to link to different evidence, okay? It's just going to be far more sophisticated for you to actually engage with different elements of the genre when you're talking about more specific examples that are potentially ironic or paradoxical. So form, look, I would encompass genre within it, but form basically means text type. So what is this? It's a novel, that's the form. Simple as that, right? That's the technical distinction. Now, what genre is the narrative? There's a narrative that goes on in here. And the narrative is satirical and all of those things we just said. So does that make sense? Form technically is just the text type. So it's a novel, and then genre is the style of the narrative, the type of writing that's been employed. For all intents and purposes, okay, can you just all treat form, the word form, as being the fact it's a novel, the fact it's satirical, all of those things, okay? Treat form as all of those big picture techniques. So big picture features of the text we'll call form. And then there's obviously things like similes, metaphors, personification. So there are micro techniques, that's similes, personification, metaphors. Now macro techniques are to do with genre, the fact it's a novel, right? The recurring techniques even in terms of what Orwell does all the time. So what did we mention before in terms of the voice of the novel? Who actually speaks, or whose perspective is it from? Third person limited. Do you see that? I would put under macro. So when we say macro and micro, I want you guys, this is how you're going to all step up your essays immediately. You're going to impress the marker and stand out. You're going to engage more with macro than you did previously. Okay, so we still want to mention the micro things, but you want to mention macro alongside them.